The air in the conference room smelled like lemon polish and wasted time. I'd been waiting for 47 minutes. My lawyer, Eleanor Vance, tapped her Mont Blanc pen against a legal pad, the rhythm a quiet, furious metronome. I just Saturday hands folded in my lap, staring at the empty chair opposite me. Jared's chair. It was a perfect, arrogant, ergonomic throne, waiting for its king. He'll be late, I'd told Eleanor. It's part of the show. This is disrespectful, even for him, Eleanor muttered, checking her Patek for the third time in a minute. The agreement states 10 a.m. The agreement states a lot of things, I said, my voice calm. It sounded foreign to my own ears. It doesn't mean he'll follow it. The door flew open then, not with a knock, but with the force of someone who owned every space he entered. Jared Sterling, my soon-to-be ex-husband, filled the doorway. He was dressed for a magazine spread, not a divorce signing. A charcoal Zegna suit that cost more than my first car. Hair artfully tousled as if he'd just come from a wind machine. Not a taxi. And beside him, attached to his arm like a living, breathing accessory, was Skylar. She was all legs and glossy lips, maybe 24, in a dress so small it could have been a napkin. She blinked her wide, vacantly pretty eyes at the room, a slight pout on her face, as if the legal ambience was boring her. Sorry we're late, ladies, Jared said, not sounding sorry at all. He strode in, pulling out the throne for Skylar before taking the seat next to her. We, not I, we. Eleanor stiffened. Mr. Sterling, this is a confidential legal proceeding. Your guest will have to wait outside. Jared just smiled. That easy, charming smile that had once made my knees weak and now just made my stomach turn. Anything that concerns me concerns Skylar. She's family. Isn't that right, honey? Skylar giggled. A high, tinkling sound. You're so bad. Jer. I said nothing. I just looked at him. I'd learned, over the last 5 years, that silence bothered him more than shouting. He needed the reaction, the drama, the proof that he still pulled my strings. He finally turned his gaze to me, the smile shifting into something patronizing. Imogen, you look tired. Rough week? You have no idea that I thought. Instead, I said, shall we begin? Jared, some of us have other appointments. His eyebrow quirked. Appointments? Job interviews already? That's my girl. Resilient. The dig was precise, aimed at the career he'd systematically dismantled. The promising financial analyst he'd convinced to quit her hedge fund job to support his vision, only to belittle every contribution she'd made afterward. Mr. Sterling, Eleanor cut in, her voice ablade. The documents. Your lawyer has reviewed them. My client has reviewed them. Let's proceed. Jared's lawyer, Robert Caldwell, a man with the sincere empathy of a tombstone, cleared his throat and opened his folder. Indeed, we are here to execute the separation agreement per the terms of the prenuptial contract signed by both parties on May 12th. The prenup, the one I'd signed in a haze of love and stupid, starry-eyed faith, the one my father, had he been alive, would have locked me in a vault to prevent me from signing. Jared had presented it as a formality. My investors insist. Baby, it's just paper. It'll never matter. Robert began to read the highlights, his monotone giving weight to the evisceration. In accordance with Section 4B, all assets accrued prior to the marriage remain the sole property of the originating party. All assets accrued during the marriage, with the exception of those specifically delineated in Schedule C, are jointly held but subject to the division outlined herein. It was legalese for, you get nothing. The marital residence on 74th Street is Mr. Sterling's separate property. Ms. Vanderbilt will vacate within 30 days. Mr. Sterling agrees to a one-time spousal support payment of $250,000 and a monthly payment of $4,000 for a period of 24 months, after which all obligations cease. Skylar let out a soft, sympathetic sigh. 4,000 doesn't go far in the city, does it? She whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Jared patted her hand. It's a generous settlement, given the circumstances. He looked at me, his eyes cold and assessing. It's more than enough for a small apartment, a modest life. You'll manage. Imogen, you're good at managing. A flash of memory, brutal and unwanted, hit me. Our 3rd anniversary dinner at Le Bernardin. I'd spent weeks planning, even gotten a new dress. He was 2 hours late. When he finally showed up, his collar was smudged with a pink lipstick that wasn't mine. Work ran over, he'd said, not even bothering with a convincing lie. You know how the startup life is. Don't look at me like that. You're so needy sometimes. Just manage your expectations. Imogen. Eleanor's voice pulled me back. The non-disparagement clause is particularly broad. Jared. It essentially gags my client from speaking about the marriage or the dissolution publicly in any forum. Standard. Jared shrugged. Protects the brand. Sterling Technologies is a family-focused company. A messy divorce narrative isn't good for anyone. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a false. Intimate register meant only for me. It's for your protection, too. Generally, you won't want people digging. It's a clean break, the way it should be. Clean for you, I thought. You get to walk away with everything. The company, the house, the narrative. I get a payout that wouldn't cover your annual watch budget and a gag order. Robert slid the final document across the table. The signature page. A line of X's waiting for me. This is it, Imogen, Jared said, his tone softening into something that almost sounded like regret. It was his masterpiece, the performance of the reluctant victor. Sign the papers, and you can start over. It's the best outcome. Really, for both of us. I looked at the pen Eleanor offered me. A simple, heavy roller ball. I took it. The room held its breath. Jared's eyes gleamed with undisguised triumph. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. My capitulation. The final, formal proof that he'd won. I signed my name. Imogen and Vanderbilt, the letters flowed. Clear and unshaking. I pushed the document back to Robert. Jared exhaled. A soft, satisfied sound. He quickly scrawled his own signature. A jagged, agressive J sterling. There, he said, as if soothing a child. It's done. Painless. He stood up, adjusting his cuffs. Skylar followed suit, smiling at me with a pitying emptiness. Good luck, Imogen, she chirped. Jared came around the table. He stopped beside my chair, and for a horrible second, I thought he might try to hug me. Instead, he just looked down, his voice a low murmur. You know where I am. If you need anything, this doesn't have to be the end. Things can change. It was the final twist of the knife, the offer of future crumbs, contingent on my complete surrender, the promise that his door was open, if I was willing to crawl back through it on my knees. I looked up at him, meeting his eyes for the first time that morning. I held his gaze, letting him search for the pain, the desperation, the heartbreak he expected to see. You'll be receiving my paperwork shortly. Jared, I said, my voice flat and clear. He blinked, the smug certainty faltering for a millisecond. Paperwork? What paperwork? This is it. It's over. I stood up, smoothing my simple wool skirt. I was a good 6 inches shorter than him, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. The transfer documents. For the shares, a beat of perfect silence. Even Skylar seemed to sense the shift in the air. Jared's face went through a series of tiny, almost imperceptible adjustments. Confusion, dismissal, then a dawning. Cold amusement, a laugh burst out of him, loud and echoing in the sterile room. The shares? Imogen. Honey, those founder shares are worthless paper, a sentimental gesture. They're not even liquid. I told you that. Another memory. Sharper this time. the cramped, hot garage that was Sterling Tech's first office, the smell of solder and cheap pizza. Jared, eyes bloodshot with desperation and ambition, holding out a single sheet of paper. The investors want more skin in the game. I need a cash injection. Just 50 grand. General, it's everything I have. I'll give you shares. A stake. It's a formality, but it'll help close the round. I'd handed over the money. My father left me. Why safety net? My runaway fund. He'd signed the stock issuance agreement with a flourish, then pulled me into a hug. Don't worry, he'd whispered into my hair. It's just a piece of paper. This company is our baby, our future. You did say that. I agreed calmly, collecting my purse. But paperwork is paperwork. And as we've just reaffirmed today, it matters. His smile hardened at the edges. Fine. Send whatever you want. My legal team will handle it. He was dismissing me, the momentary confusion replaced by renewed superiority. He turned to leave, Skylar in his wake. At the door, he paused, unable to resist the last word. Get some rest. Imogen, you look like you need it. Then they were gone, leaving behind the scent of his oud cologne and her cloying vanilla perfume. Eleanor was already packing her briefcase, her mouth a thin, angry line. The condescending bastard. Are you okay? I will be, I said, and for the first time, I believed it. The drive back to the empty, echoing museum on 74th Street was a blur. The townhouse was all his taste. Cold, minimalist furniture, stark white walls, expensive art that meant nothing. A showroom, not a home. I went straight to the hidden wall safe behind the Klimt reproduction he hated but bought because it was expensive. Inside, next to my passport and my mother's pearls, was a slim file folder. I pulled it out. Not the prenup. The other one. The stock issuance agreement. My name. The number of shares. 500.000. His signature. Messier. Younger. Eager. And a crucial, beautiful clause. One I'd insisted on adding after a late-night law school cram session. The shares granted herein are freely transferable, not subject to any right of first refusal, co-sale agreement, or other encumbrance, except as required by applicable securities law. Jared had skimmed it. Yeah. Legalese. Just means you can't sell them to my competitors, which is moot because they're worthless. Sign here, baby. I traced the notary's seal with my finger. Worthless paper. That's what he believed. He hadn't paid attention when the company went through its Series C, then its D. He didn't notice that the worthless founder's shares hadn't been diluted into oblivion because of that same clause I'd insisted on. He'd been too busy being a visionary CEO, too busy with his work trips and his Skylars, to track the cap table of his own company. Sterling Technologies had gone public 18 months ago. Those 500.000 worthless shares were now a controlling block worth just shy of $400 million. And as of 9.30 this morning, minutes before I'd walked into that conference room to sign away my marriage for pennies, they were no longer mine. My phone, buried in the bottom of my bag, buzzed. Not a call, a text, from a number not in my contacts. Unknown. The transaction is complete. The funds are routed. He hasn't caught the scent yet. A slow, deep breath filled my lungs. It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in 5 years. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the barren, manicured courtyard Jared loved. I didn't see the dead winter hedges. I saw a different view, an ocean view, from a contemporary glass house in the Hamptons. The one Jared had pointed to in an architecture magazine last summer. One day, he'd said, when the stock price hits $200, I'm buying that. Our summer place. I typed a reply. Me. Proceed with phase 2. And send the bouquet. I put the phone down. A strange sound echoed in the empty room. It took me a second to recognize it as my own laughter. Quiet, sharp, and utterly devoid of joy. It was the sound of a trap springing shut. In the pristine marble foyer, a large, extravagant arrangement of flowers sat on the console table. White orchids, calla lilies, eucalyptus, a funeral arrangement. The card, in my own handwriting, was propped against the vase. Jared, congratulations on the finalization. A new beginning for us both. Thought you could use these for the closing dinner tonight. Best, Imogen. He would read it as a pathetic, bitter jab, a final, floral middle finger. He'd scoff, maybe throw them in the trash, or let Skylar put them in her apartment. He wouldn't look closer. He wouldn't see that nestled deep in the ferns, almost indistinguishable, was a single, perfect bloom of belladonna, nightshade, beautiful, elegant, and profoundly toxic. Just a little piece of paper, just a sentimental gesture. I picked up my single suitcase, already packed and waiting by the door. I took one last look at the cold, perfect prison. Then I walked out, pulling the heavy door shut behind me. The solid thunk of the lock engaging was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Down on the street, the gray January air bit at my cheeks. I hailed a cab. Where to? None. The driver asked, eyeing my lone suitcase. I gave him the address of a luxury building in Tribeca, one with a concierge and a 12-month lease paid in full. Then I leaned back against the seat as the city, my city, streamed past the window. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. And for the first time, I wasn't a player on his board, following his rules. I was the one who had just quietly, irrevocably, set the board on fire. And Jared, the brilliant, visionary Jared, was too busy admiring his victory bouquet to smell the smoke. The Tribeca loft was everything the townhouse wasn't. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the space with pale January light, exposed brick walls, a kitchen island big enough to land a helicopter on, and silence, blessed, absolute silence, broken only by the hum of the city 17 floors below. I'd been here exactly 6 days. 6 days since I signed my life away in that sterile conference room. 6 days since I became, on paper, a divorced woman with a modest settlement and a bleak future. 6 days since I'd quietly, methodically, executed the first phase of a plan I'd been building for 18 months. The morning of day 7, I stood in front of my closet, new closet, filled with clothes I'd bought with money Jared didn't know I had, and selected a navy blue sheath dress. Conservative, professional, the uniform of a woman who meant business. My phone buzzed on the marble counter. Eleanor, you're sure about this? She asked, her voice tight with the controlled anxiety of a lawyer watching her client walk a tightrope without a net. I've never been more sure about anything. The press release goes out at 9. By 10, every analyst on the street will know. By noon, Jared will know. Good, I said, slipping on a pair of pearl studs. My mother's. Let him find out like everyone else. Through the news, Eleanor paused. I could hear her exhale, long and slow. Imogen, I have to ask one more time. Are you prepared for the backlash? He's going to come at you. Hard. He'll paint you as a bitter ex-wife trying to destroy his company. The media will eat it up. He can paint me however he wants. I said, my voice steady. The facts are on my side. I sold shares I legally owned. I didn't violate any agreements. I didn't break any laws. Everything I did was above board. Above board and smart are two different things in the court of public opinion. I'm not running for office. Eleanor, I'm taking back what's mine. She was silent for a moment. Then, your father would be proud of you. I felt a sting behind my eyes and blinked it away. He'd tell me I should have done it sooner. He'd be right. Another pause. Call me if anything happens. And Imogen, watch your back. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was thinner than she'd been 5 years ago. Sharper angles, darker circles under her eyes. But there was something new in her gaze. something that hadn't been there during the long, grinding years of the marriage. A clarity, a purpose. I grabbed my bag and headed out the door. The offices of Rhodes Capital Partners occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. I'd been here twice before, both times under aliases, both times meeting with junior analysts who had no idea who I really was. Today was different. Today, I was walking through the front door. The reception area was all chrome and white leather, with a view of the Hudson that made you forget you were paying rent in Manhattan. The receptionist, a young woman with razor-short blonde hair and an efficient smile, looked up as I approached. Imogen Vanderbilt to see Mr. Rhodes. Her eyes flickered with recognition, not of me, but of the name. Of course, Ms. Vanderbilt. He's expecting you. Right this way. She led me down a hallway lined with abstract art I couldn't afford to identify, past glass-walled conference rooms where teams of analysts hunched over Bloomberg terminals, and finally to a corner office that made my new loft look like a studio apartment. Matthew Rhodes rose from behind his desk as I entered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of weathered handsomeness that came from spending weekends sailing rather than playing golf. He was 53, divorced twice, and widely regarded as the smartest venture capitalist on the East Coast. Imogen, he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and brief. I'm glad you came. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. He gestured to a seating area by the window. .2, leather chairs, facing a low coffee table. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine. We sat. He studied me for a long moment, his eyes sharp and assessing. I've read your file. Impressive background. Wharton undergrad. Columbia MBA. 3 years at Citadel before you left to focus on personal projects. He raised an eyebrow, which we both know is code for my husband didn't want me working. I didn't flinch. That's one way to put it. Your analysis of Sterling Technologies' supply chain vulnerabilities was circulated internally here last month. Anonymous submission. But we tracked the IP address to a coffee shop in Brooklyn. He smiled. A thin, knowing curve. Impressive work. You identified a weakness their entire board missed. I had inside knowledge. I said, not bothering to deny it. 5 years of listening to Jared brag about his innovative logistic solutions while ignoring the obvious red flags. And you used that knowledge to short their stock. It wasn't a question. I met his gaze. I used that knowledge to make a calculated investment decision, one that has already returned 340%. Matthew leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. His expression was unreadable. You're either very brave or very stupid. Coming to me with this. Neither. I said, I'm practical. I need a partner who understands the tech sector and has the capital to move quickly. You have both. I have the information and the access. Together, we can accelerate the timeline. Accelerate what timeline exactly? I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim folder. Inside was a single page, a summary of the acquisition strategy I'd been refining for months. I placed it on the coffee table between us. Sterling Technologies is vulnerable. I said, their stock is overvalued by at least 40%. Their supply chain is a ticking time bomb. Their CEO is distracted by his personal life and his ego. And their largest institutional investor, BlackRock, is quietly looking for an exit. Matthew picked up the page, scanning it quickly. His eyes narrowed. You want to force a sale. I want to create the conditions for a sale. Then I want to be in the room when it happens. You want to destroy your ex-husband's company. I want to take control of it. I leaned forward, my voice dropping. Jared built Sterling on my money, my connections, and my sacrifice. He erased me from the narrative. He made me invisible. I'm done being invisible. Matthew was quiet for a long time. He reread the page, then set it down carefully. When he spoke, his voice was measured. What you're proposing is aggressive. Hostile takeovers are messy. They attract regulators, lawsuits, and bad press. And you're not exactly positioned as a neutral party. I'm not asking you to do it for free. I'm offering you a seat at the table. First, look at the deal. Co-lead on the acquisition. Whatever terms you want. And what do you want? I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. I want to be on the board. I want veto power over major strategic decisions. And I want the satisfaction of watching Jared realize that the woman he dismissed as just a wife is the one who took everything from him. Matthew studied me for another long moment. Then he laughed. A low, genuine rumble. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen a lot of revenge plays. But this one, he shook his head. This one has style. Is that a yes? It's a let me think about it. He stood, extending his hand again. Give me 48 hours. I'll have my team run the numbers. If they check out, we'll talk terms. I shook his hand. 48 hours. As I turned to leave, his voice stopped me at the door. Imogen. I looked back. Your husband.x-husband.is a fool. Everyone on the street knows it. But no one's been willing to say it out loud. He paused. I think you're exactly what this market needs. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. I met with lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors. I reviewed documents until my eyes burned. I slept 4 hours a night and survived on black coffee and protein bars. On the third day, I got the call. We're in, Matthew said, his voice crisp over the speakerphone. My team ran the projections. The upside potential is significant. We'll structure the acquisition vehicle as a special purpose entity, with you as a minority partner and board designate. My lawyers will send the term sheet by end of day. What about the timing? We move fast. I've already initiated conversations with BlackRock. They're interested. More importantly, they're impatient. Jared's recent behavior, the divorce, the public affair, the erratic decision-making that has them nervous. They want liquidity. How much do they hold? 12%, combined with your former stake, which we've now acquired through the shell companies. That gives us a controlling interest if we can pick up another 5 to 8% from retail investors. Do it. Matthew chuckled. You know, most people would be terrified right now. You sound like you're ordering takeout. I've been terrified for 5 years. I said, terror gets old. Action is better. Fair enough. I'll keep you posted. The charity gala was black tie, hosted by the Museum of Modern Art, and attended by every wealthy philanthropist and social climber in New York. I hadn't planned to go, but when I saw Jared's name on the guest list, I knew I couldn't stay away. I wore a red gown that hugged my curves like a second skin, hair swept up, diamonds at my ears and throat, real ones, bought with money he didn't know I had. I walked into the grand hall with my head high and my shoulders back, a woman reborn. The room noticed. Whispers rippled through the crowd as I passed. I ignored them, accepting a flute of champagne from a passing waiter and scanning the room for my target. I found him near the bar, surrounded by a cluster of sycophants and junior executives. He was holding court, gesturing expansively, his voice carrying over the ambient noise. Beside him, Skylar clung to his arm in a silver dress that left little to the imagination. I made my approach slowly, deliberately, savoring the moment. Jared saw me when I was 10 feet away. His expression shifted. Surprise, then annoyance, then a quick mask of polished charm. Imogen, I didn't expect to see you here. Why wouldn't I be here? I asked, stopping in front of him. I'm still a member of the museum, and I have a new dress I wanted to show off. Skylar's eyes raked over me with barely concealed hostility. It's nice. Thank you. Skylar, I see you're still wearing Jared's credit card. Her face flushed. Jared's jaw tightened. Is there something you need? Imogen, we're in the middle of a conversation. I just wanted to say hello, and to remind you that you still haven't responded to my lawyer about the share transfer documentation. He laughed, a sharp, dismissive bark. Oh, for God's sake, is that what this is about? Those worthless shares? I told you, Imogen, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. Stop wasting everyone's time. Worthless, I repeated, letting the word hang in the air. That's interesting, because I just received a valuation report that says otherwise. His smile flickered. What are you talking about? Check your email, Jared. Or better yet, check your stock price. There was an interesting development this morning that I think you'll want to know about. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there with his mouth half open. Behind me, I heard him mutter something to his sycophants, then the rustle of fabric as he pulled out his phone. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could feel his eyes on my back, burning with confusion and dawning dread. The rest of the evening was a masterclass in social warfare. I networked with precision, targeting key investors and board members I knew would be valuable allies. I charmed. I listened. I planted seeds of doubt about Sterling Technologies' leadership. By midnight, I had secured 3 informal meetings with major shareholders and one very interesting conversation with a senior executive from Apex Technologies, Sterling's biggest competitor. You know, the Apex exec said, swirling his whiskey. We've been watching Sterling's recent moves with great interest. Great interest indeed. Oh, let's just say we see opportunity where others see stability. He smiled, a predator's smile. If you ever want to discuss that further, my door is open. I smiled back. I might take you up on that. As I was gathering my coat to leave, a hand closed around my elbow. Firm, insistent. I turned. Jared. His face was pale, his eyes wild. Gone was the polished veneer. In its place was raw, barely controlled fury. What did you do? He hissed, keeping his voice low. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play games with me. Imogen. I checked the stock price. Someone dumped a massive block of shares this morning. The price dropped 6%. And the trading pattern, IT matches the volume of my founder shares. Your founder shares, I repeated, savoring the words. Funny, I thought they were worthless. His grip tightened. Those shares were supposed to be locked up. You can't sell them without board approval. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. My voice was ice. Take your hand off me, Jared, before I make a scene. He released me, stepping back. Tell me what you did. I sold what was mine, legally, transparently, with full documentation. I smoothed my sleeve where he'd touched me. You really should read the contracts you sign, Jared, especially the ones you think don't matter. His face contorted. You can't do this. I'll sue you. I'll bury you in litigation until you're bankrupt. You can try, but I have a very good lawyer, and a paper trail that goes back 5 years, including the original stock issuance agreement, which you signed, which explicitly grants me the right to transfer those shares without restriction. That clause wasn't supposed to be there, but it is, and you signed it. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a whisper. You spent 5 years telling me I was nothing, that I was lucky to have you, that without you, I'd be a nobody living in a studio apartment. Well, guess what, Jared? I just sold my worthless shares for $380 million, and I used the proceeds to buy a house in the Hamptons, the one you wanted, the one you said we'd get when the time was right. The color drained from his face. You're lying. I'm not. Check the deed. It's already filed. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the crowded lobby, his world crumbling around him. The next morning, my phone exploded. News of the share sale had leaked to the press. The Wall Street Journal ran a front-page story. Sterling Technologies founder's ex-wife sells controlling stake. Stock plummets. CNBC devoted a full segment to the drama, complete with talking heads debating the legality and ethics of my actions. Jared's PR team went into overdrive. They painted me as a bitter, vindictive ex-wife who had sabotaged her former husband's company out of spite. They questioned the validity of the share transfer. They hinted at legal action. None of it mattered, because while Jared was busy fighting a public relations war, I was winning the actual battle. At 2 p.m., I received a call from Matthew. BlackRock is in, he said. They've agreed to sell their entire position, combined with your former stake and the retail shares we've accumulated. We now control 23% of Sterling Technologies. Enough to force a board seat. Enough to force a lot of things. He paused. Are you ready for the next step? I looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, glittering in the cold winter sun. Somewhere out there, Jared was panicking, scrambling, trying to figure out how his perfect life had unraveled so quickly. He had no idea what was coming. I was born ready, I said. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Sterling Technologies headquarters for the first time in 2 years. The building hadn't changed. Same sleek lobby, same aggressive branding, same security guards who eyed me with suspicion as I approached the front desk. I'm here for the board meeting, I said, sliding my ID across the counter. The guard looked at the name, then back at me, recognition dawning. Ms. Vanderbilt? That's right. He stammered something about checking with upstairs, but I was already walking past him toward the elevators. I knew the way. The boardroom was on the 38th floor. I arrived early, before any of the other directors. The room was all dark wood and leather, with a long mahogany table that could seat 20. At the head of the table, where Jared always Saturday was a single nameplate. I walked to the seat directly across from it and sat down. One by one, the board members filed in. Some recognized me immediately and tried to hide their shock. Others had to be introduced. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air electric with unspoken questions. At precisely 10 a.m., the door swung open and Jared strode in. He stopped dead when he saw me. What the hell is she doing here? His voice was sharp, demanding. I smiled, slow and sweet. I'm here for the board meeting. Jared, didn't anyone tell you? I'm your newest director. You can't be serious. I am. Very serious. I pulled a document from my briefcase and slid it across the table. This is a formal notice of my appointment, approved by the majority shareholders. As of this morning, I hold a seat on this board with full voting rights. Jared snatched the document, scanning it furiously. His face went through a series of colors: white, red, purple. This is a joke. He spat. It's not a joke. It's business. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands. Now, shall we begin? I believe the first item on the agenda is a review of the company's supply chain vulnerabilities. I have some thoughts I'd like to share. For a long moment, Jared just stared at me. I could see the rage boiling beneath the surface, the desperate urge to lash out, to assert dominance, to reclaim control. But he couldn't. Not here. Not in front of the board. So instead, he did the only thing he could do. He sat down, and the game continued. The boardroom fell silent. Jared stood frozen at the head of the table, the document trembling slightly in his hand. I watched him process the reality of what was happening, that his ex-wife, the woman he discarded like a worn-out accessory, now sitting at his sacred table with a shareholder resolution that gave her a voice in his company's future. This is a violation of the non-disparagement clause. Jared said finally, his voice low and dangerous. You signed an agreement. You can't interfere with company operations. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. Interfere? I'm not interfering. I'm participating. There's a difference. I gestured to the other board members, who were watching the exchange with barely concealed fascination. I'm a shareholder. I have a legal right to board representation. If you have a problem with that, take it up with Delaware corporate law. Jared's jaw worked. He looked around the table, searching for allies, finding mostly averted gazes and uncomfortable shuffles. These men and women had been his supporters for years, but they were also pragmatists. 23% ownership meant leverage, and leverage meant they had to listen. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. He took his seat at the head of the table, slamming the document down in front of him. Let's get this over with. First item on the agenda, quarterly earnings review. The CFO, a nervous man named Harold Finch, began his presentation. I listened carefully, taking notes, saying nothing. Jared kept glancing at me, waiting for me to pounce, to interrupt, to make a scene. I gave him nothing until the right moment. Moving to supply chain optimization, Harold said, clicking to a slide showing a complex flowchart of international logistics. We've identified some potential bottlenecks in our Southeast Asian distribution network, but overall, the system is performing within acceptable parameters. I raised my hand. Jared's eyes snapped to me. We don't do QA during presentations. I'm not asking a question. I'm making a point. I stood, walking to the front of the room. Harold, may I? Harold looked at Jared, then back at me, uncertain. I suppose. I took the remote from him and clicked back several slides. This chart shows your Thai manufacturing hub. You're routing 60% of your component production through a single facility in Rayong Province. That facility is operating at 98% capacity with no redundancy plan. We have contingency protocols. Harold said, you have a document titled Contingency Protocols that hasn't been updated in 14 months. I clicked to another slide. I pulled the audit history this morning. The backup facility in Vietnam was decommissioned last quarter due to cost optimization measures, which means if anything happens to Rayong, a natural disaster, a labor strike, a geopolitical disruption, your entire supply chain collapses. The room went quiet. Jared's face reddened. Where did you get that information? He demanded. I'm a board member. I have access to the same data everyone else does. I just actually read it. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Jared said, addressing the board. These are standard operational risks. Every company has them. Every company addresses them. I countered. You've been cutting corners to inflate quarterly numbers. The board approved a capital expenditure budget of $42 million for infrastructure upgrades last year. Only $11 million was actually spent. Where did the rest go? Jared slammed his hand on the table. This is not appropriate for an open session. We'll discuss operational details in executive committee. No, we'll discuss them now. I turned to face the other board members. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that my presence here is unusual. I understand that there are questions about my motives, but I'm not here to settle personal scores. I'm here because I believe this company is being mismanaged, and I have the data to prove it. I clicked to a final slide, a comparison chart showing Sterling Technologies against its three main competitors. Our R&D spending is down 15% year over year. Our market share in the Asia-Pacific region has dropped 8 points. Our employee turnover rate is the highest in the sector. And our CEO, I looked directly at Jared, that has been distracted by a very public divorce and a very private relationship with a subordinate. That's a lie. Jared snarled. Is it? Skylar Anderson was hired as a marketing coordinator 18 months ago. She was promoted to senior manager 3 months later, despite having no relevant experience. Her salary is 30% above market rate for her position, and according to HR records, she's logged 47 overtime hours in the past 2 weeks, all of them on evenings when you were supposedly in meetings. The board erupted. Voices overlapped. Questions flying from every direction. Jared tried to regain control, but it was too late. The dam had broken. I returned to my seat, folded my hands, and watched the chaos unfold. The meeting adjourned 3 hours later, having accomplished nothing productive. Jared stormed out without speaking to anyone. The other board members dispersed in small clusters, casting wary glances in my direction. I was gathering my materials when a hand touched my arm. I looked up to find Margaret Chin, the longest-serving independent director, standing beside me. She was in her late 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with a reputation for being unflappable. That was quite a performance. She said, "I wasn't performing. I was informing." Margaret smiled. "A thin, knowing curve, whatever you call it. You've made enemies today. Jared has a long memory and a longer reach. I'm aware. Are you? Because I've been on this board for 12 years. I've watched him steamroll opponents, bury scandals, and rewrite narratives. He's not going to take this lying down. I'm counting on it." She studied me for a long moment. "You know, when I first heard about you, the ex-wife selling shares, joining the board, that I assumed you were just another bitter woman seeking revenge. But watching you in there," she shook her head, "you're not seeking revenge. You're seeking control. They're not mutually exclusive." "No," she agreed. "They're not." She extended her hand. "If you ever need an ally on this board, my door is open." I shook her hand. "Thank you, Margaret. I may take you up on that." 2 days later, Jared showed up at my apartment. I wasn't surprised. I'd been expecting him. The security desk called up to announce him, and I considered refusing entry. But curiosity won. I wanted to see what version of Jared would appear, the charming manipulator or the cornered animal. It was the cornered animal. He stood in my doorway, disheveled and wild-eyed, wearing yesterday's shirt and a 5 o'clock shadow that screamed desperation rather than style. Behind him, I could see his driver waiting nervously by the elevator. "We need to talk," he said. "We're talking. Inside, not in the hallway." I considered him for a moment, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. He walked into my loft, looking around with barely concealed disdain. The exposed brick, the modern furniture, the view of the Hudson, everything about this space was a rejection of his aesthetic, and he hated it. "Nice place," he said, the words dripping with sarcasm. "How much of my money did you spend on it?" "None of your money." "My money. From the shares you told me were worthless." He spun around, pointing a finger at me. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think you've won. I think I've made a good start." "A good start?" He laughed, bitter and sharp. "You've destabilized my company. You've embarrassed me in front of the board. You've cost me millions in market value. And you call that a good start?" "I call it fair compensation for 5 years of emotional abuse and financial manipulation." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "I can destroy you, Imogen. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, investigators, media contacts. I can make your life a living hell. You already did that. For 5 years. Remember? I didn't back away. You isolated me from my friends. You belittled my accomplishments. You cheated on me openly and then blamed me for not being supportive enough. You made me feel like I was nothing, like I deserved nothing. That's not true. It's absolutely true. And the worst part is, I believed you. For years, I believed you." I took a breath, steadying myself. "But I don't believe you anymore. And that's the difference between now and then. You don't have power over me. You never did. I just forgot that for a while." Jared's face twisted. "You're making a mistake. I'm offering you a chance to walk away with what you have. Sell me back the shares. Resign from the board. Take your money and disappear. I'll even increase the settlement. Generous. I'm serious. Imogen, this is your only warning. If you keep pushing, I will fight back. And I don't lose. Everyone loses eventually." I walked to the door and held it open. "Your 5 minutes are up." He stood there, chest heaving, fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he might hit me. Part of me almost wanted him to dot. IT would make everything so much simpler. But he didn't. He just turned and walked out, slamming the door behind him. I waited until I heard the elevator doors close. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Matthew? It's Imogen. He came to see me. Threats? Promises of destruction. The usual. Did he mention the SEC investigation?" I paused, What SEC investigation? You haven't heard? It broke about an hour ago. The Securities and Exchange Commission has opened a formal inquiry into Sterling Technologies' accounting practices. Specifically, the capitalization of certain operating expenses that should have been recorded differently. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who initiated the inquiry? That's the interesting part. It was a whistleblower complaint, filed anonymously, but with detailed internal documents that could only have come from someone very high up in the organization. Was it you? No. I was going to ask you the same question. I thought about it, about the files I'd copied before leaving the townhouse, about the encrypted emails I'd sent to an address I'd created specifically for this purpose, about the careful, methodical way I'd documented every irregularity I'd discovered during my years of being ignored. It wasn't me, I said slowly, not directly, but I may have facilitated some information sharing. Matthew was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Imogen Vanderbilt, you are a dangerous woman. I learned from the best. The best? My father. He always said, never start a fight you can't finish. But if you're going to start one, make sure you have more ammunition than the other guy. Sounds like good advice. It is. And I have plenty of ammunition. The SEC investigation dominated headlines for the next week. Sterling Technologies stock dropped another 18%. Analysts downgraded the company. Class action law firms began circling, sniffing for shareholder lawsuits. Jared went into crisis mode. He hired a team of white shoe lawyers, issued defiant press releases, and gave interviews blaming short sellers and malicious actors for the company's troubles. He never mentioned me by name, but the implication was clear. I stayed quiet. I attended board meetings, asked pointed questions, and continued building my coalition. Margaret Chin became a reliable ally. 2 other directors privately expressed concern about Jared's leadership. The cracks were spreading. On the 8th day, I received a package at my office. No return address. Inside was a single document, a subpoena from the SEC, requesting all communications between myself and any current or former employees of Sterling Technologies regarding the company's financial practices. I read it twice, then called Eleanor. They're expanding the investigation. I said, I saw. They've subpoenaed half the board. Should I be worried? Depends. Did you do anything wrong? No. Everything I did was legal, documented, above board. Then you have nothing to worry about. But Imogen, she paused. Be careful. Jared has friends at the SEC, political connections. He might try to use this to discredit you. Let him try. I have nothing to hide. That's what everyone says before they get buried. I hung up and stared at the subpoena. The official language was dry and bureaucratic, but the message underneath was clear. Someone was trying to drag me into the mud. The question was whether they'd succeed. The answer came 3 days later, in the form of a front-page article in the New York Post. Sterling ex-wife's dirty laundry. Sources claim Imogen Vanderbilt manipulated stock sale. The article was a hatchet job. It portrayed me as a vengeful ex-spouse who had exploited insider knowledge to profit at the expense of innocent shareholders. It quoted anonymous sources claiming I had improper relationships with board members. It even dredged up an old college incident that a plagiarism accusation that had been dismissed as a misunderstanding. T.O. suggests I had a history of unethical behavior. I read it calmly, then called Matthew. You've seen it? I've seen it. Jared's PR team is working overtime. Can we counter it? We can try, but the damage is done. Perception is reality in this town. And right now, the perception is that you're a villain. Then I'll be a villain. I pulled up my calendar. I'm giving a press conference tomorrow at 11 a.m. I want you there. A press conference? Imogen, that's suicide. They'll eat you alive. Or I'll eat them first. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. Trust me, Matthew. I know what I'm doing. The press conference was held at the Yale Club, neutral ground, in a ballroom that had hosted countless political announcements and corporate apologies. I arrived early, wearing a simple black suit and no jewelry. No diamonds, no designer labels, just me, plain and unadorned. The room was packed. Reporters from every major outlet, cameras from every network. The buzz of speculation was almost audible. I stepped to the podium and adjusted the microphone. Good morning. Thank you for coming. I paused, letting the room settle. I'm going to make a brief statement, and then I'll take questions. I won't be discussing my personal life, my marriage, or any ongoing legal proceedings. Everything I say today will be limited to matters of public record and my role as a shareholder of Sterling Technologies. A murmur rippled through the crowd. First, let me address the allegations in today's New York Post article. They are false. I did not manipulate any stock sale. I did not engage in insider trading. I did not have improper relationships with board members. Every transaction I conducted was legal, transparent, and fully compliant with securities regulations. I pulled out a stack of documents. These are the trading records, the legal opinions, and the correspondence with my attorneys. They are available for review by any accredited journalist. I invite you to examine them thoroughly. I set the documents down and looked directly at the cameras. Second, I want to address the broader narrative that has been constructed around me. I've been called a bitter ex-wife, a vengeful woman, a corporate raider. Those labels are convenient for people who don't want to confront the truth. I paused. The truth is that Sterling Technologies has been mismanaged for years. The truth is that its CEO prioritized his ego over his company's health. The truth is that I, like many women in similar positions, that was dismissed, marginalized, and erased from a story I helped write. I leaned forward. I didn't sell my shares to hurt Jared Sterling. I sold them because I believed and still believed that the company needs new leadership. I joined the board not to destroy, but to rebuild. And I will continue to advocate for changes that benefit all shareholders, not just the ones in the corner office. The questions came fast and furious. I answered each one calmly, directly, without evasion. Yes, I had documented concerns about the company's finances. Yes, I had shared those concerns with other board members. No, I had not violated any confidentiality agreements. An hour later, I walked out of the ballroom to a standing ovation from a handful of supporters who had gathered in the lobby. Matthew met me at the door. That was impressive. It was necessary. You've changed the narrative, at least for now. For now is all I need. I checked my phone. 12 missed calls, including 3 from unknown numbers. What's next? Next. We wait. Jared will respond. He can't let this stand. Let him respond. I slipped my phone into my pocket. I'm ready. Jared's response came faster than I expected. That evening, as I was reviewing documents in my apartment, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Hello, Ms. Vanderbilt. The voice was male, professional, with a slight southern drawl. My name is Thomas Whitfield. I'm a partner at Whitfield, Haynes Associates. I represent a group of Sterling Technology shareholders who are concerned about recent developments. Concerned how? They believe the company's value has been artificially depressed by a coordinated campaign of negative publicity. They're considering legal action against the parties responsible, meaning me, meaning anyone who has acted to harm shareholder value. I lean back in my chair. Mr. Whitfield, I appreciate the courtesy of a phone call, but I think we both know that any lawsuit against me would be baseless. I've acted within my rights as a shareholder and a board member. Perhaps, but baseless lawsuits can still be expensive to defend, and they can still generate negative publicity. Is that a threat? It's an observation. My clients are exploring all options. I wanted you to be aware. Consider me aware. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. This time, it was Eleanor. I just got a call from a lawyer named Whitfield. He's representing a group of Sterling shareholders. I know. He just called me. He's fishing, trying to intimidate you into backing down. I'm not backing down. I know. But Imogen, this is getting serious. Jared is throwing everything he has at you. Lawsuits, SSC investigation, media attacks. Eventually, something will stick. Then I'll deal with it when it does. There's something else. I heard a rumor that Jared is planning to call a special board meeting to vote on removing you. He can't remove me. I was appointed by the shareholders. He can try, and if he gets enough votes, he can make your life very difficult. I thought about it, about Margaret Chen and the other directors who had expressed doubts, about the alliances I'd been building, about the leverage I still held. Let him call the meeting. I said, finally, I'll be there. Imogen, Eleanor, I've spent 5 years being afraid of Jared Sterling. 5 years walking on eggshells, biting my tongue, shrinking myself to fit his expectations. I'm done with that. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. But this time, I'm not fighting on his terms. I ended the call and walked to the window. Below, the city glittered, indifferent to the war being waged in its towers. Somewhere out there, Jared was plotting his next move, calling his lawyers, his PR team, his allies, building his case, marshalling his forces. Let him. I had plans of my own. The special board meeting was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I knew because Jared's assistant had sent the calendar invitation with the casual arrogance of someone who believed they were delivering a death sentence. The subject line read simply, Emergency Board Session, Governance Matters. Governance Matters. Code 4. We're going to try to destroy you. I arrived at Sterling Technologies headquarters at 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. The lobby was quiet. The security guards eyeing me with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. I'd become a celebrity in this building, that the ex-wife who'd crashed the party, the woman who dared to challenge the king. The elevator ride to the 38th floor felt longer than it should have. I checked my phone one last time. A text from Matthew. Everything is in motion. Trust the plan. I trusted the plan. I'd spent 18 months building it. The boardroom was already half full when I walked in. Margaret Chen nodded at me from her seat. 2 other directors, both of whom I'd cultivated over the past weeks, offered subtle acknowledgments. The remaining seats were occupied by Jared's loyalists, men who owed their positions to his patronage and would vote accordingly. Jared sat at the head of the table, flanked by his lawyer, Robert Caldwell, and a woman I didn't recognize. She was in her 50s, severe-looking, with iron-gray hair and glasses that caught the light. Corporate counsel, I guessed, brought in for the kill. Imogen, Jared said, his voice smooth and condescending. Glad you could make it. I wouldn't miss it for the world. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. Please, seat, he said. The room fell silent. Jared looked around the table, savoring the moment. Before beginning, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending on short notice. As you all know, this company has faced unprecedented challenges in recent weeks. Our stock price has declined. Our reputation has been damaged. And much of that damage can be traced to the actions of one person. He looked at me, Ms. Vanderbilt. I'm honored to be singled out. Save the sarcasm. This isn't a joke. He slid a stack of documents across the table. I've called this meeting to propose a resolution, effective immediately. I'm recommending that the board revoke Ms. Vanderbilt's directorship and pursue legal action to recover damages caused by her deliberate efforts to undermine company value. A murmur rippled through the room. Margaret Chen's expression remained neutral, but I could see the calculation behind her eyes. On what grounds? I asked. Breach of fiduciary duty, violation of the non-disparagement clause in your divorce agreement, and potential securities fraud, pending the SEC investigation. Bold claims. Do you have evidence? Jared smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. I have enough. He nodded to Robert Caldwell, who opened a briefcase and produced a thick binder. Over the past several weeks, we've compiled a comprehensive record of Ms. Vanderbilt's activities, communications with short sellers, meetings with competitors, coordinated media attacks designed to depress stock value. It's all here. I didn't look at the binder. I kept my eyes on Jared. And you think this will hold up in court? I think it will hold up in the court of public opinion. And I think it will be more than sufficient to justify your removal from this board. He leaned forward. I gave you a chance. Imogen, I offered you an exit. You chose war. Fine. You're going to lose. The room was tense. Several directors shifted uncomfortably. Margaret Chin cleared her throat. Before we vote, I'd like to hear from Ms. Vanderbilt. Jared's jaw tightened. This isn't a debate. Nevertheless, she deserves the opportunity to respond. Margaret turned to me. Imogen? I stood up slowly. I walked to the front of the room, positioning myself where everyone could see me. Then I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. I'd like to play something for you, I said. A recording I made approximately 18 months ago. It's a conversation between Jared Sterling and his then chief financial officer, Alan Mitchell. Jared's face went white. You're bluffing. I pressed play. The recording was crystal clear. Jared's voice filled the room, arrogant and unguarded. Look, Alan, I don't care what the auditors say. We need to hit the numbers this quarter. Defer the expenses. Capitalize the R&D costs. Push the revenue recognition forward. Whatever it takes. Alan Mitchell's voice. Hesitant. That's aggressive. Jared, if we get audited, we won't get audited. I have friends at the firm. They'll look the other way. Just make it happen. And if someone finds out, no one will find out. And if they do, I'll blame accounting. That's what we pay them for. The recording ended. Silence descended like a guillotine. Jared was on his feet. That's fabricated. I generated. She's manipulating technology to frame me. I held up my phone. This recording has been authenticated by 3 independent forensic audio labs. The original file was time-stamped and encrypted. I've already submitted copies to the SEC, the Department of Justice, and the FBI. You're lying. Am I? I turned to the board. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't come here to destroy this company. I came here to save it. Jared Sterling has been cooking the books for years, inflating revenue, hiding losses, misleading investors. The SEC investigation isn't about me, that it's about him. And it's only the beginning. The room erupted. Directors shouted over each other. Robert Caldwell was on his phone, probably calling damage control. The severe-looking woman was whispering urgently to Jared, who looked like he might collapse. I raised my hand for silence. Somehow, miraculously, the room quieted. There's more, I said. I have documentation of wire transfers to offshore accounts, evidence of insider trading, records of payments to women who signed NDAs after being harassed by the CEO. I looked at Jared. Do you want me to keep going? Or should we skip to the part where you resign? Jared's face was a mask of pure hatred. You planned this. From the beginning. From the moment you told me I was nothing. Yes, you'll regret this. I already regret the 5 years I wasted on you. This is just cleanup. Margaret Chin stood. I think we've heard enough. I move that we table the resolution to remove Ms. Vanderbilt and instead consider a vote of no confidence in the current CEO. Seconded, said another director. Jared spun around. You can't do this. I built this company. I own this company. You own 28%. I said quietly. I control 23% through my partnership with Rhodes Capital, combined with the shares held by directors who support change. We have enough votes to remove you. You can't remove a founder without cause. Cause? I laughed. Jared, I just played a recording of you admitting to fraud. That's cause. That's more than cause. That's a federal crime. He looked around the room, desperate. His allies avoided his gaze. His enemies stared him down. For the first time since I'd known him, Jared Sterling looked genuinely afraid. Fine, he said, his voice hollow. I'll resign. Effective immediately. Effective immediately. And you'll cooperate fully with the SEC investigation. He hesitated. Then, fine. And you'll transfer your remaining shares to a blind trust pending the outcome of the investigation. That's not. Those are the terms. Jared, take them or I release the rest of the recordings. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once. Sharply. Good. I turned to the board. I nominate Margaret Chin as interim CEO. Effective immediately. All in favor? Hands went up around the table. 8 out of 12. Enough. Margaret nodded at me, a flicker of respect in her eyes. Thank you, Imogen. I accept. Jared stood, swaying slightly. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished. The king had lost his crown. This isn't over, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, Jared, it is. He walked out of the boardroom without looking back. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been tight for 5 years. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, Jared's resignation was headline news. The SEC expanded its investigation. The DOJ announced a criminal inquiry. Sterling Technologies' stock dropped another 20% before stabilizing. I gave exactly one interview to CNBC. The anchor, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Cole, didn't pull punches. Ms. Vanderbilt, critics say you orchestrated a hostile takeover of your ex-husband's company out of spite. How do you respond? I smiled, calm and composed. I didn't orchestrate a takeover. I exercised my rights as a shareholder. The fact that those rights happen to expose systemic misconduct is incidental. Incidental? You recorded your husband without his knowledge. You built a case against him over years. That sounds deliberate. It sounds like preparation. I had legitimate concerns about the company's direction. I documented them. When those concerns proved valid, I acted. And the personal element? The divorce? Patricia, I'm not going to pretend that my marriage ending wasn't painful. It was. But this isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. Jared Sterling made choices that harmed shareholders, employees, and the company he claimed to love. Those choices had consequences. You don't feel any satisfaction? I paused. Satisfaction implies an ending. This is just the beginning. Sterling Technologies has a long road ahead to rebuild trust. I intend to be part of that rebuilding. The interview went viral. Some called me a hero. Others called me a villain. I didn't care. I'd stopped caring about other people's opinions the day I walked out of that divorce signing. A month later, I stood in the lobby of the Sterling Technologies building, now renamed Vanderbilt Tower. The irony wasn't lost on me. The company Jared had built with my money now bore my name. Margaret Chin had proven to be an excellent CEO. She'd cleaned house, fired the complicit executives, and implemented transparency measures that had restored some investor confidence. The stock was slowly recovering. The SEC investigation was ongoing, but the worst seemed to be over. I was heading to my new office. Yes. I'd accepted a permanent board position. When my phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Imogen. Jared's voice. Tired. Defeated. I need to talk to you. I don't think we have anything to talk about. Please, just hear me out. I sighed. 1 minute. I'm sorry. I blinked. What? I said I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For what I did to the company. For all of it. I was silent for a moment. Is this a recording? Are you trying to get me to say something incriminating? No. I've lost everything. Imogen. The company. My reputation. My money. Skylar left me last week. She took the apartment and the car and half of what I had left. That sounds like a personal problem. It is. And I deserve it. I know that now. He paused. I spent so long thinking I was untouchable, that the rules didn't apply to me, that I could treat people however I wanted and never face consequences. You proved me wrong. You proved yourself wrong. I just provided the evidence. Maybe. Another pause. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I did, who I was. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, thank you, Jared. That means more than you know. Take care of the company. It was my baby, but you'll do better with it than I ever did. I will. Goodbye, Imogen. Goodbye, Jared. I hung up, stood there in the lobby of the building that bore my name, surrounded by people who now worked for me, in a city that had finally started to see me as something other than his wife. I should have felt triumphant, victorious, vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired and free. 6 months later, I stood on the stage of a newly renovated auditorium in downtown Manhattan. The sign above the entrance read, "The Vanderbilt Center for Women in Business." I'd used a portion of my proceeds to fund it, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women entrepreneurs navigate the obstacles I'd faced. Legal support, mentorship, seed funding, a network of allies who understood what it was like to be underestimated. The audience was packed, hundreds of women, and a few men, all here to hear me speak. I stepped to the podium and adjusted the microphone. Thank you all for coming. When I started this journey, I thought I was fighting for revenge. I thought I was fighting to prove a point, to show one man that he couldn't break me. I paused, but I was wrong. I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting for something bigger. I was fighting for the right to define my own story, to be seen as more than someone's wife, someone's ex, someone's victim. I looked out at the faces in the crowd, young women with dreams in their eyes, older women who'd been through their own battles, allies who believed in the mission. This center is not about me. It's about every woman who's been told she's too much, or not enough. Every woman who's been dismissed, marginalized, erased. Every woman who's been made to feel like her success depends on someone else's permission. I smiled. Here's the truth. It doesn't. Your success depends on you, on your talent, your hard work, your determination, and on the community you build around yourself. That's what the center is for, to build that community, to provide that support, to make sure no woman has to fight alone. Applause thundered through the room. I waited for it to die down. Someone asked me recently if I'm happy, if I feel like I've won. I shook my head. Winning isn't about beating someone else. It's about becoming who you were meant to be. And I'm still becoming. We all are. I stepped back from the podium. The applause swelled again, louder this time. As I walked off stage, my phone buzzed. A text from Matthew. "Congratulations. You did it." I typed back. "We did it." Another text came in, this time from an unknown number. I opened it. "You were right. I should have read the fine print. .j." I smiled, then deleted the message. Some chapters deserved to be closed. Later that evening, I stood on the balcony of my Hamptons house, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. The house Jared had wanted. The house I'd bought with his own money, in a roundabout way. My phone rang. "Matthew, quite a speech today. Thank you. You've inspired a lot of people." "I've tried." A pause. "What's next?" I looked out at the horizon. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, beautiful and infinite. "I don't know yet," I admitted, for the first time in a long time. "I don't have a plan. I don't have a scheme. I don't have a strategy." "How does that feel?" "Terrifying and liberating." Matthew laughed. "Well, when you figure out what's next, let me know. I'd like to be involved." "I will." I hung up and stood there, alone with the sunset and the sound of waves. Somewhere in the city, Jared was starting over. Somewhere else, the company I'd helped save was rebuilding. And here, in this moment, I was just a woman watching the sky change colors. It was enough. For now.